Well, look who it is. Welcome, my friend, and thanks for stopping by my channel. If this is your first visit, go ahead and hit subscribe and send this video to someone you like, someone you love, or someone who owes you lunch. Tell me in the comments what city or country you're watching from. I actually read every single one. Time to get started. I saw the post while the coffee cup in my grip was still hot. There on my phone was my wife of 11 years, arm draped over a beaming coworker in a Hilton ballroom, striking the kind of pose reserved for prom royalty. The caption underneath shouted, "My real partner," trailed by a pair of red heart icons and the hashtag #workhusband. Charming, delightfully subtle. My thumb froze halfway through the feed. The dog grunted on the carpet, unaware that a fissure had split our marriage in a burst of emojis. I remained perfectly still. I raised no voice. I didn't hurl the mug at the wall like a melodramatic sitcom husband. I just kept looking. I took in every pixel. The lines of heart emojis, comments like, "You two are adorable," and, at last, a couple that works, each ending with a tears of laughter icon. Her colleague Mindy contributed a casual flame symbol. How tasteful. A mechanism inside me engaged. I stood, went to the drawer, and pulled out the envelope I had been keeping as insurance for months. Finalized divorce documents. Already signed, dated, and stamped. No theatrics, no bluffing. Only reality. I placed the bundle squarely on the dining table, then walked outside with the head shears and started trimming the boxwoods as if it were any ordinary afternoon. Take a moment. If you've ever had reality sucker punch you before your pajamas came off, inhale. And while you're here, tap subscribe. It funds the team that stays up all night roasting the richest revenge blend imaginable. She waited until the evening to make contact, but I could already recite the lines. Her specialty is converting any accusation into my wrongdoing, acting for a phantom jury of simpletons. This time, however, she had provided the proof with her own hands. I hadn't snooped on personal messages or eavesdropped. She broadcasted it publicly, forgetting that I scroll LinkedIn with my cereal. The post had sat there for 8 hours, long enough for her to tally each like, respond to every remark, and thank him with a heart-eyed smiley, writing that she couldn't do it without you. Under his comment, she tacked on, "LOL, my eternal conference partner." My gut didn't twist. It turned to stone. The pain wasn't in the post itself, but in its casual comfort, the way she looked at him as if he alone got her. I recognized that expression. It had never been directed at me. Amid the torrent of online giggles, she initially missed my response. Divorce documents are on the dining room table. No capital letters, no symbols. End of message. At 4:42 p.m., she liked a Weekend Vibes meme. By 5:03, the first missed call appeared. I ignored the ring. I was power washing the driveway, icy water thundering out, scouring everything clean. By sundown, I had fixed 3 rules: no debates, no notice, and absolutely no free counseling for a person who treats her infidelity like a corporate bonding exercise. I had zero interest in mentoring someone who uses treachery as a networking game. That night, the post went quiet, comments disabled, caption edited, but I already had 3 copies of the screenshots, time-stamped, footnoted, filed away like war crime exhibits. She had no idea what she had set in motion. She thought I would pout, perhaps bark, and then settle down with a beer and a sleepless night. She either forgot who I am or never truly knew. Some men forego shouting, they plan. Her face popped up on my screen again, pixelated by hotel Wi-Fi, but her smile was razor-edged. Okay. Seriously, you're cool with this, yeah? She laughed, twirling a glass of wine like it was a prop. Beige Marriott curtains rippled in the background. Come on, it was just a gag. Everyone has a work spouse these days. Totally normal. I observed, silent and composed. I looked at her the way a rattlesnake watches a careless squirrel. She rattled on. You have friends at the office as well. It's merely a humorous caption. People post those all the time. You know Mindy, she dared me. Ah, Mindy again, the office pep leader, 3 divorces deep, with a TikTok devoted to her manifestation jar. If Mindy recommended cliff diving to boost engagement stats, my wife would jump, hashtags and filters queued. I drank my water and remained quiet. She noticed. Her smile faltered. Hey, you're being weird. Are you all right? I finally answered. Good thing you labeled it a joke. Her eyes narrowed, probing. What are you talking about? Because now it's public. She blinked. What's public? The HVAC's low drone was the only response as I hung up. Half a minute later, her name rang again. I rejected the call. A minute later, she called audio only. I ignored that too. After the 4th try, she texted, I don't understand why you're behaving like this. It's only a post. Others do far worse. You're being overly dramatic. Cut the theatrics. Call me. I muted the device, folded some laundry, warmed up leftover Thai, and watched an old episode of Frasier. Nothing fancy, just intentional serenity. The stillness she always professed to crave, yet continuously shattered with her restless energy. By 10:42 p.m., the count stood at 6 missed calls, 2 voicemails, and 1 inadvertent voice message, her complaining that I was acting damn crazy, followed by a male voice murmuring he had seen the post. Archived. She interpreted the silence as rage. In fact, it was the storm's eye, the calm between tremor and tsunami. I was after dread, not regret. Her post exposed someone who believed she was invincible. She thought she could embarrass me publicly and walk off unscathed. I had endured her showy flirting, hard drinking, and boundary skimming before, but that was finished. That night, I revoked her access to 2 joint savings accounts. Not permanently, merely to shake the cage. I reported the travel credit card as compromised and locked it. Petty? Perhaps? Precise. She wouldn't discover it until checkout, and when she did, I wanted her mind racing. What had I done? What did I know? Whom had I informed? At 6:13 a.m., post-dog walk and just before the sprinklers engaged, I composed an email. Cool air, steady hands, complete certainty. The subject line was polite, corporate, and venomous. Potential PR exposure stemming from recent employee behavior. No fluff. Attention. I am submitting a formal report about a publicly accessible social media post authored by your employee, Jane, redacted, while she was representing your company at an industry conference. The post, and the public reaction that followed, are enclosed. She reacted by frantically scrubbing comments, tweaking captions, and toggling privacy settings, a hurried surface-level fix aimed at appearances, not substance, unaware that far more consequential steps were already underway. At 7:42, I walked into my bank with supporting documents and ordered a transfer. I stressed that I alone controlled the account, that I was the sole beneficiary, and that the matter was urgent. When the branch manager, Linda, who has known both of us for years, asked if any of the money was jointly held, I affirmed it was entirely mine, originating from my mother's estate and never commingled. Paperwork began immediately. At roughly the same time, Jane was reportedly in a hotel bathroom, working her phone to hide an Instagram story from her husband, apparently oblivious to a Reddit thread gaining traction titled, "When Your Work Wife Gets Too Comfortable." My next appointment was with a real estate attorney. Although we used the pronoun we when the lake house was purchased 5 years ago, I alone paid the purchase price, covered the upkeep, handled the lawn service, and replaced the roof. Her contribution amounted to 2 summers of use punctuated by complaints about the Wi-Fi speed. Nevertheless, she paraded it online as our retreat, posting filtered sunsets as though she had brokered the deal. My attorney, Shelley, reviewed the deed and confirmed we could retitle within a week. She asked if I only wanted survivorship rights removed or Jane's name erased altogether. I instructed a complete removal, with a clause barring any future claims, and she executed accordingly. By noon, I was back at my desk, combing through tax filings. I called Doug, the accountant we had both relied on, to say I was switching to individual representation and that any questions from Jane should be routed to her own advisor. When he hesitated and asked if something was wrong, I told him matters were simply being clarified. Before the day ended, the cabin deed listed only my name, and the inheritance funds sat secured in a trust accessible exclusively by me. At 1811, an unsigned text came through. No introduction, just, "I thought you should know. This wasn't the first time." Followed by 3 grainy, time-stamped photos showing Jane, in a red blouse I recognized, entering a hotel room that wasn't hers while holding 2 conference lanyards. The shots were from 3 different events in 3 different cities. Each image showed the same 2 names at check-in and only 1 room allotted. A final attachment, a PDF invoice from the latest conference, listed 1 room for 2 guests over several nights, a king bed, a champagne charge on the first evening, and a note reading, "Anniversary upgrade requested." The sender added that she claimed it was a joke and common practice, but we're not all laughing. No identity was provided, yet the detail made it clear the tip came from her own circle, signaling fractures inside her network and proving that colleagues watch, save, and, when it suits them, expose. I ignored the message. 37 minutes later, a separate email hit a corporate inbox. Subject line, "Emergency all hands, mandatory at 9 a.m. the next morning, dispatched by the CEO's assistant in clipped urgent prose." That signaled HR had escalated the situation, legal had done its review, and leadership had begun protecting the firm's reputation. Jane knew none of this. She kept texting variations of, "We need to talk," and kept pruning her Instagram as if scrubbing a feed could undo intent broadcast to an audience, while the executives had moved on to risk mitigation on their own behalf. That night, I went over the photos again and realized the blouse was the same one she wore on our anniversary 3 years prior. In one image from Phoenix last November, a banner behind her proclaimed, "Integrity, Vision, Trust," and she was grinning beneath it, palm on his chest. Assets probably meant for internal morale pieces, but now perfectly suited as Exhibit A. I shut the laptop and poured a drink, not in celebration, but to mark the moment before the blow landed, fully aware that a CEO calling an all-hands with less than a day's notice rarely signals routine metrics. It signals accountability, delivered through slides, strategic pauses, and names no one expected to hear out loud. She showed up the next morning in a navy blazer and slacks, a high-buttoned blouse, iced coffee in one hand, and her phone in the other, still typing as the door closed. Attendance surpassed any ordinary mid-quarter budget review. Directors, managers, even 2 partners were present. That was the first red flag. The second was the lack of pastries or coffee and the hush of diverted eyes. She slipped into her usual seat, attempted small talk, and was met with silence. At 9:03, the CEO walked in alone. No HR chief, no chief of staff, no finance lead. He took the front of the room with a remote in hand, face composed, and opened by saying that an issue touching professionalism, ethics, and the organization's core values required immediate attention. Jane stiffened, her fingers suspended above the phone. Behind the presenter, the projector purred to life. First a blank rectangle, then the company crest, and at last, an image. Her own face filled the screen. She and a colleague were locked together on the Hilton Ballroom's dance floor. The post's heading lingered. "My true partner, number work husband," bracketed by 2 tiny hearts. Beneath it, a single line of text gleamed, sharp as a bullet under glass. "The divorce papers are on the table." A few people sucked in breath. One covered the moment with an awkward cough. Most stayed frozen, eyes glued forward as if witnessing a cliff edge fall in slow motion. Jane tried to speak, but nothing left her throat. The slide advanced. Oversized Slack threads appeared, light-hearted teasing and inside jokes that, under fluorescent bulbs, sounded anything but innocent. One exchange ended with room 326 again, capped by a playful wink. Next came side-by-side hotel invoices, 3 cities, identical room number, synchronized check-in times, king bed, single guest name, champagne upgrades, premium turned down. Jane's reply escaped as a fractured whisper. This isn't the way it looks. Her words met silence. Even the so-called work husband, 4 chairs away, stared forward with the pallor of a condemned man. The CEO never raised his voice. He didn't need to. In an even tone, he said, "This company trades in regulatory compliance, contractual honesty, and fiduciary duty. When our people step into the public eye on our behalf, their conduct must uphold that trust. Your posts, your behavior, your hints, they all count." He paused. Every deed carries a cost. Laying the remote on the table, he walked out. No one spoke after he left. No further explanation, only detonation, debris left behind. Jane remained rooted, blinking too fast. A faint tremor rippled through her hand. Her mouth opened, then closed. The room felt scorched. Mindy rose first, head bowed, slipping out. Others followed swiftly and silently as though disgrace were contagious. Her work husband never met her gaze. When she finally stood, she seemed smaller, paler, unsteady. Leaving her coffee, she walked out. The firm chose a subtler cruelty than firing, keep her on salary so she could swing between shame and dismissal. They left her dangling in that hush, still employed, socially invisible, a ghost with a nameplate. Away from the office, her real husband ignored her texts. He spent the afternoon digging a shallow irrigation trench by the back fence. He hadn't seen the corporate calamity live, but LinkedIn had buzzed his phone. "Your ex-wife's co-worker has endorsed you for strategic planning." On Monday, her badge still opened the door. No warning, no pink slip, just a calendar invite titled Departmental Realignment, effective immediately. Her new station, client onboarding oversight, translation, a solitary desk in the distant wing, beside the copier and opposite a fire extinguisher. Her team, scattered, her client list, reassigned, CRM access, temporarily suspended during restructuring. The title stayed, a participation medal, everything else vanished. Outlook, empty. Slack, silent. The desk phone rang once, an intern asking how to change toner. No direct reports, no tasks, no meeting invites. Tuesday, her nameplate slid to a corner workstation. By Wednesday, it was replaced with a plain sheet marked Temporary Workspace. She told herself it was a brief, bureaucratic shuffle. By Friday, the pattern was clear: deliberate exile. She had been sentenced to occupational purgatory, alive yet erased. Then the murmurs began. Conversation in the break room died the instant her heels touched tile. She saw eyes dart away, heard laughter morph into staged coughs, watched colleagues invent urgent emails whenever she neared the coffee machine. The work husband had been shifted to remote consulting. She hadn't seen him since. His silence after day one was likely legal advice, or instinct. Worst of all, she still didn't know who had tipped them off. She scoured every text, every DM, every Slack channel. She confronted Mindy, who denied involvement but suggested, "Maybe keep your head down for a bit?" Keep her head down. The phrase nearly made her scream. Hadn't she helped build this place? Closed last year's biggest Q2 deal? She had organized the retreat, led mentorship lunches, moderated the ethics and culture panel, an irony now etched on a plaque above her monitor. Interns gave her a wide berth, as though she carried a scent. Twice she emailed HR, polite queries about new duties and where she could contribute. Both replies were identical boilerplate. "Thank you for your inquiry. Leadership is assessing future structure and will inform staff accordingly." No signature, no name, just a form letter from a system she once mastered with ease. At home, she staged normalcy. Dinner served, candle lit, small talk attempted. He was courteous, yet remote, the tone reserved for a cashier. Casually, she asked, "Do you think someone contacted my office?" He looked up. No idea. She blinked. Something's happening. They're treating me like an outcast. He shrugged. Maybe somebody saw your post. Word travels. She forced a brittle laugh. You don't actually think someone reported it? That would be absurd. He offered a thin smile. Would it really? He cleared the dishes. She watched his calm, deliberate movements, and a new feeling spread. Not guilt or regret, but fear. For the first time, she wasn't writing the story, and whoever held the pen wasn't finished. She slammed the door hard enough to rattle picture frames. Mascara etched twin streaks along her cheeks. Her bag hit the floor, and she strode into the living room, still in heels, a woman on fire. You're sick, she spat, her throat already fraying. Why would you put me through this? What kind of man does that? He lifted his eyes from the sofa, remote poised in his palm, the ball hanging midair on the paused baseball broadcast. He didn't even blink. Quit pretending you don't know, she said, pacing a trench into the carpet. Is this revenge? Justice? You're blowing up my life over a caption, over a ridiculous hashtag. Silence. Her voice cracked. It was a joke. You know it was. I wasn't serious. You know how Mindy is. She eggs me on, dares me, and I was only trying to be funny. That's not comedy, he muttered. She froze. I screwed up, she admitted, quieter now. Fine, I'll own it. But this is cruel. The office, the hush, the looks. I don't even know how it got out. Yes, you do. She blinked. What are you talking about? You know exactly where it came from. You just can't say it aloud. Her lips snapped shut. He stood, walked past her to the hall closet, pulled a plain manila envelope, and handed it over like a receipt. She slid it open, her frown deepening with every inch. Page 1 stole her breath. Divorce papers. Notarized, signed. Behind that, a meticulous balance sheet. Line after line. Bank totals, wires, deeds, trusts. At the back, marked with a yellow tab, a single-page affidavit, signed and witnessed. From a colleague, not the so-called work husband, but another woman who'd had enough of the act. The statement cut deep. 3 conferences, shared hotel rooms. She'd admitted her own husband was too passive to react. She'd even laughed. He'll never leave. I'm the one he depends on, not the other way around. Jane's knees dipped. Still no tears. She eased onto the coffee table's edge as though the room had doubled in weight. He remained standing, remote in hand, far away. I've retained counsel, he said, flat. Everything's filed. Only your signature is missing. She shook her head hard. We can fix this. Please. You know me. You know me. This isn't us. No, he said. This is you. It's always been you. Then the sobs hit, raw, twisted. She reached for him. He stepped back like her touch might sear. I swear I never meant to hurt you. I never meant any of this. But you did. His voice could have frosted glass. You figured I'd just sit there and take it. I can be different, she whispered. You won't, he replied. The locks will. He walked to the kitchen, opened the fridge, and poured a glass of water with the casualness of taking out the trash. She stayed put, hemmed in by paperwork that mapped her future in bullets, ledgers, and sworn lines. He never shouted, never crowed. That would have given her something to grip. And she ached for that. Disorder was her habitat, shouting, tears, a target to fight. But this? Sterile. He hadn't simply left, he erased her, methodical, final, quiet. She entered the courthouse like she was closing a deal. Pencil skirt, muted lipstick, a binder bristling with tabs, red for assets, blue for alimony, yellow for boundaries she wouldn't cross. Her face was composed, nearly smug, someone bracing for an irritating lunch meeting. She'd even brought her court bag, a beige designer tote she wielded in depositions to signal control. Authority. Her attorney, bland as skim milk priced like a neurosurgeon, murmured about approach. She nodded, sure she still held a few aces. Then the judge appeared, and the first docket page hit her like a shovel to the chest. The asset division. Already locked, Accounts closed, transfers logged, legally airtight. Every move executed before she realized the marriage was over. He had filed 3 weeks earlier, citing a fundamental collapse of trust. 2 exhibits accompanied it. Exhibit A, her original post flaunting the office fling. Exhibit B, an internal HR memo outlining a conduct investigation tied to her behavior at 3 off-site events. Her lawyer visibly winced. "How did he get that?" Jane whispered. The judge nudged her glasses up. "Your employer supplied it voluntarily, since the situation publicly touched their brand." Translation: she'd embarrassed the firm enough that they were actively helping the man divorcing her. Corporate loyalty has limits, especially when LinkedIn threads cozy up to Reddit. Then came the property records. She'd braced for a clean 50-50 split. Instead, the summer house deed appeared, transferred solely to him, perfectly papered, dated 2 days before her infamous upload. "But I live there," she protested, voice cracking at last. The judge looked over her lenses. "You lived there. You paid nothing toward purchase, upkeep, or repairs. Your name never appeared on the title." She tried again, but her lawyer's grip tightened on her wrist beneath the table. And it kept spiraling. Her bid for spousal support collapsed. The disclosures showed she'd out-earned him for years, until the recent fiasco. Now she was the liability. Unmoved, the judge processed each entry like circuitry. "Given your current employment status and the circumstances of your demotion, there's no adequate basis for alimony. Additionally, the record reflects a sustained pattern of misrepresentation and personal misconduct during the marriage." Misconduct. The word rang like a gavel strike. Jane clenched her jaw. She leaned toward her attorney. "What is happening?" He stayed quiet, because he didn't know. 3 moves behind, $15,000 late. She tried objections, explanations, tears. None landed, none counted. The board had been arranged weeks before. This wasn't negotiation, it was summation. She surrendered the lake house. She lost access to the joint investment account. Half the furniture she assumed would default to her disappeared from the list. What she gained was stark. The final docket note imposed a mutual non-disparagement clause. Any future public comment on the breakup would require legal review first. He hadn't just seized her assets, he seized her narrative. When court adjourned, he shook his lawyer's hand, passed her without a flicker, and slipped out a side exit as if finishing routine maintenance. She stood in the corridor alone, binder drooping in her grip, while other attorneys' murmurs circled like vultures over fresh meat. And for the first time, clear, undeniable, she understood. She hadn't simply lost a husband. She'd lost everything. At 7:12 a.m., the email arrived. No greeting, no padding, just a subject line that flattened her career into one cold sentence. "Organizational realignment, final notice," it read. Still buried under the duvet, hair in disarray, and her phone surviving on a meager 12% charge, she thumbed the alert open. For a moment, the words failed to sink in. The note's tone was icily refined, slick, lacquered, unmistakably PR approved. "Following an extensive evaluation, we have determined that your role no longer aligns with our evolving leadership standards and core principles. Your separation package has been processed. See the attached materials for details. Thank you for your contributions, and we wish you every success going forward." Directly beneath the message sat a PDF labeled "Final Statement and Transition Materials." Her fingers shook as she tapped it. Page 1 listed a reduced prorated payment, contingent on a strict non-disclosure. Page 2 drafted a press release lauding a leadership overhaul and a renewed pledge to integrity. Her name was absent, yet the void she would leave would echo louder than any headline. The phone slipped from her hand, thudding onto the carpet while the screen still glowed. No tears surfaced. She simply remained there, hollowed out. Years of groundwork, every sealed contract, every dinner missed. Each birthday surrendered to a client crisis, now condensed into a single line of someone else's press kit. Outside, he knelt in the garden. Unhurried, oblivious to gathering clouds, He settled hydrangeas into fresh soil, one neat hole after another. Knees pressing the earth, lungs drawing slow, steady breaths, like a man no longer anticipating sudden blows, he never reached for his phone. There was no need. The final move was already made. No spectacle, no victory lap, only stillness. This wasn't staged for public retaliation. It was always meant for repair. Thus, after the deceptions, the gaslighting, and the corporate sheen, the silence was his. The harshest treachery is rarely the affair itself. It's the smug certainty that consequences will never appear. The tale endures because it isn't fueled by rage or lurid revenge. It centers on reclaiming dignity with surgical precision. Triumph requires no shouting. The keenest blade is the one they never notice.